Welcome to Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose podcast. Our podcast showcases inspiring appraisers and professionals from the industry who are leaders in their field. How did they get to where they are? What have they learned along the way? What can we learn from them? Your host is real estate investor, entrepreneur, and appraiser, Michael Hobbs.
Well, welcome back. We are excited that you're joining us for another informative and engaging episode of Perusing's The Power of Values. Once again, we have another just intriguing peer with a fascinating background. No two pathways are the same when the opportunity shows up to hear how someone has gotten into the profession, stayed in the profession, and what they're doing. Today's episode is no different. I'm very excited to share our guest, but before I do, quick reminder, this doesn't go and it doesn't grow without your generosity. So definitely like the podcast. And who's one peer you could share this with? 1 + 1 = 3 when we're all sharing in the sharing economy. So let's make that happen with that. I'm really excited to introduce our guest, Wade Purdy. How you doing, sir? Thanks for joining us.
Good. How are you, Michael?
Man, I'm excited. I can't believe we're already in 2024. I'm like, did we get here already? I'm like, we sure did. My goodness. Well, hey, everybody wants to know, so were you born this way, or how did your life intersect into the evaluation and appraisal profession?
I came up the way that all of us other appraisers came up. I went to college to be a commercial pilot, and what do you know? Next thing I know, I'm doing appraisals.
I mean, everybody goes to college to be a commercial pilot, right?
Isn't that how everybody goes to this path?
Oh, my gosh. Tell us about that. So did you grow up in a family that flew, or what was the story?
Yeah, I actually grew up in a family of doctors, and it kind of bucked that trend, and doctors and preachers. And I decided one day that I wanted to fly airplanes, which was my little boyhood dream, and started college, got all the way through college, graduated.
Yep.
Took a job as a flight instructor at West Houston Airport.
Oh, wow.
And worked my way up and found myself as the chief pilot for an oil corporation here in Houston.
Does that mean you were flying private planes?
Well, they're turboprop aircraft, so yes, small commercial commuters.
Oh, fascinating. So you had a little more opportunity to travel around maybe than some others.
Little bit.
Oh, that's
especially during the holiday times. So you think your travel's bad? Yeah, try to fly around all day long. And then I moved over to a little small commuter airline based out of Sugar Land, which is a suburb of Houston area.
Sure.
And then I decided it would be fun to fly a dirt bike.
Wait, did you say fly a dirt bike?
Yeah, fly a dirt bike. Come to find out, aerodynamically, that was not a wise decision.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, I'm thinking of like when I'm watching motocross and when, the X Games first came out. I mean, that kind of stuff on BMX. Yeah. But you're talking. So give us a picture what this is.
Okay. So I got called into helping a buddy build a fence.
Okay.
I was leaving the next morning to go to a flight school called Flight Safety up in Dallas, and he lived 5 minutes from the airport, where I lived an hour and 5 minutes from the airport. So he said I could spend the night there, and that was going to be awesome. And I get there, and he goes, "Hey, so we're building a fence today."
Okay.
And, okay, sucker, here I am. I'm on the hook. So we helped build the fence, and after we're done, he said, "Hey, you want to take the dirt bike out?" I said, "Sure." So we're riding around this big empty field next to a bayou, which here is just a small stream. And he said it was his turn. And so I was coming back, and I blew past about 85. What I didn't know when he did was there's a tributary coming off that bayou, and I flew off at 85, traveled 111 feet horizontally, 29 feet vertically, and hit the concrete with no helmet on.
Oh, my. You hit the concrete?
Yeah.
So you didn't clear the tributary?
No chance.
You weren't going near fast enough, huh?
There was no ramp. I just went straight off. I didn't know it was coming. I did not know it was coming.
I thought you said building the fence. So in my mind, I'm naturally thinking you guys built the ramp too. I'm like,
no. The house was totally separate. After I got suckered into building the fence, then we were going to go have some fun.
Oh my God.
And the fun turned out to be the worst part of, my life at the time. I guess you call that my old life, being I died 3 times on a life flight ride to the hospital. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was pretty traumatic, and ended my flying career in one single motion.
Holy smokes. So you go out over this concrete tributary. You hit what? The far wall, I imagine?
The far wall, yeah.
Yeah. And then were you still on the bike when you made contact, or did you come off the bike?
According to my buddy, I ghost rode the bike, and the bike landed on me. Part of it was landed on me.
It's even worse. Goodness.
Yeah.
And so were you wearing anything other than like jeans and a flannel shirt or something?
No, yeah, that was it. Jeans, a T-shirt, yeah. Well, like I said, I died 3 times on the way to Life Flight, but they brought me back each time.
Holy cow.
Broke my spine in 2 places, collapsed both lungs, blood trauma to the left eye, was in a coma for 14 days, and then I ripped a carotid artery in my neck. So like 3 days after they released me from the hospital, I had a massive stroke.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I mean, that just sounds like an obvious path to get into appraisal. So
Doesn't it?
How many, is it months or years of rehab did you have to do?
A couple years, and once I got back, we had some friends, and the house next door to them was for sale.
No, real quick, just that when you say I got back, like, what does that mean? Does that mean like you got, like, were you in a hospital the whole time, or you in a camp?
Well, not the whole time. I was in a hospital for quite some. I'm kind of fuzzy about that whole time period.
I understand it.
But I was in a hospital for some time, and then they put me into a rehabilitation hospital, and I was put into a room with a bunch of other people that had head injuries.
Oh, wow.
I was in a room surrounded by whiteboards, and I had been a flight instructor as well as chief pilot for a oil company for so long that the doctors would leave, and I would get up and start teaching advanced aerodynamics.
Oh, because there were whiteboards there, and
And I started writing equations.
Oh.
And they came in and they said, "Hey, what's this?" And everybody that had it in my brain injury class, I'd made a bet. Hey, if anybody can guess what this equation is, I'll give them $5.
Okay.
So when the doctor comes in, he goes, "Hey, what's this?" I said, "Well, if you get that answer, you get $5. And everybody in the class was like, "Yeah, $5." But everybody's excited. We're all like little kids. By the way, I was basically a toddler with a high IQ for math.
Oh my gosh.
And so they called down to a local university and had one of the math professors come up to tell them what the equation was. And they said, "We're going to leave this on the board and we'll come back tomorrow." They wanted to see if there was something going on in there or if I was just nuts.
Okay. Yeah.
And so this math professor comes up and he goes, "Sure, that's the equation that you use to calculate the speed at which you hydroplane."
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And so the next day I came in and they said, "Hey, we can't figure it out. No one's going to get the $5. What is it?" So that's the speed at which you hydroplane. And so I was in rehabilitation hospital, which is awesome hospital.
Yes,
here in Houston for 1 week, and they said, "Go home. Just go home."
Really?
It took me about another year and a half to grow up from, essentially I was kind of like 8 or 9 after the accident. I woke up from the coma, and about a year and a half later, I was an adolescent. So I was a teenager.
Holy smokes.
And they said, "It's time to go get your first job." So I went and just got a little retail job and grew up. Then the appraisal comes in. I went to go get a house, and our friends, the house next door was selling. And we said, "That'd be great." And so I went over there, and there was a contract on the house. And so the appraiser comes out, and I go, "Hey, I'll give you $200 not to do this, man. Just walk away."
I love it.
And he goes, "No, I can't do that." I said, "Well, what do you do anyway? What's the story behind this?" And he goes, "Well, I do this, that, and the other." I said, "Okay." Well, we found a house down the street. And my realtor calls and says, "Hey, you need to take the appraiser on a check for $350. So, okay. So I take this guy a check, and I get more into it. I say, "Hey, what are you doing here?"
Sure.
I'd seen one guy do this, and now I'm watching another guy do this. And I said, "I think I can do this." He told me more about it. He said, "This is the fun part of the job. I go out and measure houses. I talk to people. I take a bunch of photographs. I make notes. And then I go up and I utilize math. Now you really have me intrigued."
Oh, yeah. You're speaking your, what do you call that? Love language.
Yeah.
You're romantic with you talking math.
So I went home and I typed up a letter explaining my education, my experience, and what had happened to me. And I faxed it to every appraisal firm that I could find the fax number for in Houston.
Ooh, so you too are one of our peers that knows what a fax is with thermal paper.
And I got a reply, and I was hired by one.
Do you remember, Wade, by chance, how many of these you sent out back?
Probably somewhere between 15 and 20, I'm guessing.
Okay, 15 and 20. All right. So, I mean, a fair number. I mean, it wasn't like 271.
Yeah.
You got a response.
I did. The very next day, I got asked to come in for an interview. And
congratulations.
Thank you. Was hired on the spot, and that's how the appraisal career started.
That's phenomenal. So here, being resourceful, you reach out to 15 to 20 people. You get a response rate between 5 and 7.5%, which is solid for, what they would call direct mail, which is what fax was. Right. And you get hired, quick interview, get hired on the spot. And then, so what was it like that first month?
Oh, man. So they gave me about 5 reports and said, here, read these. I sat down and I read them, and they said, okay, now you're going to do it. And they sent me out with a gentleman who was really cool, had been doing this for a long time, named Joe. And so me and Joe went riding around, and he said, okay, so here are the things that you do and you don't do. He showed me how to measure a house. He showed me how to take notes, showed me what things we were looking for. He said, we're going to do this a couple times before you get the hang of it. And I'm going to do it. You're going to watch. And then you're going to do it. I'm going to watch. So that very first time we were out measuring a house, he says, one thing you never want to do is you never want to hold your camera up to the window as you're photographing comparables. He said, people will get mad. He says, in this little town that I kind of moved to, and, it's kind of on the outskirts, and it's a good old boy town. And he's holding the camera as we're doing this. And then, so I stopped the car. He takes a picture. And this guy named Bubba, I'm guessing his name was, runs out and jumps on the hood of my car.
Come on. He runs out of the house and jumps on the hood of the car.
And the whole time he's yelling, are you from the FBI or the CIA?
Oh, dang.
And I'm like, this is my very first week on the job.
First week.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? The guy's holding on to my hood from, up by the windshield.
Yeah, up by the windshield.
Well, this is a mistake. I'm a head injury guy with anger issues, which is just common for head injuries. and you're threatening me holding on to a 4,000-pound car. This is a bad idea.
Oh, my gosh.
So I gunned it and cut the wheel, and the guy went rolling through the cul-de-sac, and we just left. And I learned from the very get-go to be very, very cautious when photographing comparables.
This is in your first week. What did your, mentor, supervisor, senior person from the firm, what did he have to say about this?
Just said, be careful.
Right. Be careful. Yeah, okay, I'm with you on that. Be careful. Sure. Wait, I know I'm jumping in on this, but for different parts of the country, there are some different guidelines, regulations, and requirements. So is it typical to pack in Houston, or is it not typical, or what?
Very, very typical. And for the gentleman that I consulted with years and years ago, he was the largest REO broker, which is foreclosure broker in the Southwest.
Yeah.
And he required it. It was required.
He required it. Yeah. Interesting. I will come back to that. So here it is in your first week. Thank goodness you did not have to brandish any iron, or in that case, ceramic. And you guys make it out. Bubba goes rolling, and you're still in the profession at the end of the first week.
Yes, sir. I felt it's not going to get more exciting than that. I thought.
Oh, my goodness.
The market right now is tough for appraisal companies. Many companies are having a hard time getting enough work with the same marketing they used to. Is your company struggling, having a hard time getting new customers, or getting additional work from existing customers? The answer to this problem is easier than you think. Do more business with the people you already know. Over 10 years, the average U.S. appraisal firm meets over 17,000 potential customers. That's a lot of people you could be doing business with right now. But it's a big problem if you don't have a proven process to communicate with them. StoryLux turns this problem into an opportunity to grow. Our advanced AI marketing tool can rebuild your contact lists and harvest long-forgotten communications. Imagine reaching out to everyone you've ever met with just one click. For the cost of 1 or 2 appraisals a month, StoryLux helps you reconnect and market to people who already know you, like you, trust you, and want to do business with you. Act now by contacting StoryLux today to turn your business growth dreams into reality. Email appraisal@storylux.com. That is appraisal@storylux.com. And now back to part 2 of the episode.
So they said, read these 5 reports. Let's take you out for a little bit, and then you're going to go do them. Was it your second week and you were out on your own, or how was it back then?
Yeah, I guess it was my second week. I went out, measured a couple properties. I think we were doing 2 or 3 a day at the time.
Yes.
And that was 03. So I'd gone out. I'd done several site visits with Joe. And second week, they said, okay, you're going to go out and do it yourself. We're doing a lot of interim construction. So basically, you're going out and taking a photo of an empty lot, putting the plans in the report, and making a master file, which you're going to do restricted files off of later on.
Okay.
I cloned that first report, put in my comparables, put the plans in, put the maps in, and sent it over to my mentor, who promptly painted the whole thing red with a big fat paintbrush, not a marker, but a paintbrush.
A paintbrush. I love that.
And said, what do you, I mean, like the addendum, which was, I think, 3 or 5 pages back then. And I mean, every paragraph was circled with, come see me, come see me. And he goes, you didn't change anything. I said, well, nobody told me to change anything. I just put the...
Hey, monkey see, monkey do. I mean, come on. I'm just being a good follower. What are you talking about?
I put the subject information in. I put the new comparables in, and that was it. I didn't make any adjustments. I didn't make any changes. I just, here you go. Here's the cloned report. And I quickly learned how to line by line write an appraisal report.
Wow. That is one in-your-face entry experience. So for you, starting in that area of Houston, were the houses relatively homogeneous, or was it more divergent based on the areas and neighborhoods and property types?
Really, most of what we were doing in that first year, I worked for that company for about a year before my mentor left and I followed him. But we were doing so much in our construction that everything was the same, because you would get a plan, back then, let's say 2283, which they named the plan based on the square footage for this one builder that we worked for 5 different builders, but for that one builder. And so you would build a master, and based on that master, you would basically do a bunch of restricted files as long as it was in the same neighborhood and the values were within a certain percentage that the bank would allow.
Man, that's amazing. What a phenomenal way. So you get about a year's experience. You follow this gentleman. You go to another company. What did you notice was different at the second place versus the first place?
The work went from being all interim, 90% interim construction to being all just straight resale purchases or refis. And that was a lot different environment, where you're out measuring every single property. Everything's always new. And I ended up getting a lot of the outskirt properties, so a lot of the rural properties, so where the principle of conformity doesn't matter.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's just doesn't matter if the houses look the same. They're both acreage, they're both rural. They both have, outbuildings and a well and septic. So, it was a kind of a culture shock.
Wow, that is indeed the case. How did the learning progress for you to take on this new experience?
A lot of it was kind of learning on the go, and the way you'd go when you sit down with a broker. And there was a lot of heartfelt discussions. You'd go to somewhere new like Chapel Hill, which is, something that I wasn't familiar with. I'd go and I'd sit down with a couple different real estate offices and just, hey, I'm new to the area. Could you kind of explain things to me? And just really absorb as much information from them as possible to try to learn the market the best you can to make informed decisions. And then you would bounce that off of someone that was familiar with that area. So even with the new firm, we had people that specialized in different areas. Oh, wow. So you go up to somebody and you say, hey, here's this report I put together in Chapel Hill, and they would look it over. So since you've got another tier of mentorship there.
Oh, that's great.
And they're saying, hey, well, do your numbers really justify, the use of this comparable or the use of this adjustment? Are you sure that's what the data is indicating? Because I know that area and this doesn't look correct. And so it was nice where you got that sure, I went through the data, here's what I found. And then someone goes, well, let's see, maybe there's some lapse in your analysis here. So it was really nice.
Wow, that is phenomenal. And so how large was the community of appraisal professionals that you first worked with versus the second place that you went to?
So the first place was probably somewhere, I'm guessing around 20.
Got it.
And then the second firm was 5.
Okay, so at all points, it wasn't just you and one other person. There were at least several other people to be in community with, learn from, bounce things around off of, tell stories, or talk about Bubba rolling off the hood of your car. I mean, those kind of things.
Right.
Got it. Man, phenomenal. So what was your learning trajectory at the second firm?
I really soaked in, as much information as I could from everybody there. And then it really helped with that, having peers around that you could bounce things off of. And we all learn at different levels and different intensities. And so when you see one thing, then you guys can bounce stuff off each other. Then you go ask someone, a mentor that's higher than you, hey, what do you think of these things? And where do you see any fallacies? And so things progress pretty quickly. And then I am an avid reader and just love to absorb information. It's kind of been my nature.
Yeah.
And so anything that I can get my hands on appraisal related, I'm reading or watching or listening to.
Sure. How did you first connect with when you talked about your immediate romance when you heard that this thing called real estate appraisal has math involved in it? How has that both guided you and served you along the way?
It's really been awesome. I think I did a lot of, a huge portion of my learning after, most of the firms kind of split up. And I know like the second firm I was with, we split up. It was unsustainable anymore. So we all kind of went our own way.
Got it.
And I really, without having people there to bounce things off of, just right in the office that you could go ask questions to, it really forced me to go out and dig in. And with a mathematical mind, it made me want to break things down as far as possible and put a scientific approach to this because, according to USPAP, we're supposed to act unbiasedly. Well, when you have a subjective range of adjustments you can select from, there could be a lot of bias in there why you picked 2,500 versus 2,000 or 3,000.
Yes.
And so if you could iron that down into something more concrete, I think that's a lot better. So even to this day now, I'll typically use three different methods for developing an adjustment and tighten the range as far as I possibly can. So that way, when I say, hey, it's 2,500, there's a reason behind my madness.
Yes. That's impressive that there's madness in the assignment development. I'm going to have to pull out, I own some textbooks. I look at them every once in a while. Clearly there's still a lot more to learn. I mean, that's the beauty of this profession. You're never done learning, but that's a new one I need to look up is Appraisal Madness.
It's definitely in the 15th edition of the new, real estate appraisal. So you'll find it in there. The appraisal of real estate, you'll find it in there.
I have no doubt. Clearly, I need the newest dictionary. I think I have the previous version, and I didn't jump on that book discount there was at the end of the year. So
I'll send you a screenshot of mine. It definitely says madness, underlined a couple times, highlighted exclamation points, I'm sure.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely fascinating. So you're getting this opportunity, and as you continue to kind of give people a sense of timing, when did you first come into the industry?
So I came in 2003. I'm coming up on 21 years. I think it's this March or May, one of the two.
Got it. So you got in a few years, not right before, but a few years before the great financial crisis. Great Recession is what many of us know it.
Right. And I still remember people in the office talking about how they could see it coming, So
really?
They were seeing that it was, unsustainable. We had weekly meetings, and it was one of the big topics on the meeting, that kept coming up over and over. And being a young appraiser, you just sit around and listen.
So how did that, because they were talking about seeing it coming, and some people had more foresight than others, some were in markets that were much more indicative of the changing conditions. How did that start to show up in the work you were doing?
I'm not sure that it necessarily did, to be honest with you.
Okay.
We were, again, each appraiser is kind of his own little island, even in an office. And so I've always been very, very thorough, sometimes to the point of being slow, admittedly.
Yeah.
I like to dot the I's and cross the T's and everything and make sure that I have a good understanding of what's going on in the market. So I've always been really cautious. So, I would say it's made more caution, but one thing I could tell you the collapse did was it caused me to go out and search further and get more reliant on mathematics and,
okay,
really deeper into the analysis and the different methods that we can use that are, recognized and acceptable among our peers. Just a real in-depth analysis of the data is all I'm looking for. I've taken many classes, one with, as we spoke about before, I love Heather Sullivan. She had a wonderful class. I've taken George Dell's classes.
Yeah, talented peer, definitely talented peer. When you talk about expanding your capacity to value properties, what else would you say that you regularly or more often draw upon that you do not necessarily see peers in your market doing?
Yeah, maybe coming up with alternate valuation products for people that aren't looking for lender appraisals. So not everybody needs, a full appraisal. They're looking for a pre-listing appraisal. They just had their house built 2 years ago. They still have the builder, floor plan, the builder docs. A lot of times you can still find the information on MLS from the original builder. So you're pretty sure of the square footage. If they're willing to take a little bit of time and go through the house and take the photos that you request as needed, you can see a lot of the quality condition in those photographs and, save them a little bit of money and a little bit of time and help get something back to them a little bit quicker. And it's better than a BPO or something, just a broker's price opinion where you can give them something that's more concrete and doesn't require, a full appraisal, because what's the reason for you going out and measuring the house if you have the plans from the house when it was built 2 years ago?
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. If it's, especially if there's some prior documentation and you can get comfortable with it, or you do a couple spot check measurements just to, validate it, that I can understand that approach. So how has that, that's one piece of it. I'm curious, if I'm not mistaken, just based on some peers I know in that market area, Texas is a non-disclosure state.
Correct.
And, that's you pretty much only operated in Texas. So that's what you know.
Yes, sir.
Well, how are you taught to deal with that potential challenge? And I'll say potential challenge because for some people it's an absolute challenge. For others, they're like, that's not a problem at all. How did that show up for you, and how have you learned your way in and through this?
So, being in a non-disclosure state, it does offer some challenges, but there are some things that you can do, such as, let's say you see a prior transfer of a property. You still want to make notation that the subject transferred.
Got it.
And then just put on there that it's unreported. And then make sure that you disclose in your report the fact that Texas is a non-disclosure state and that information was not obtainable, that you don't have access to that information as privileged information.
So is that quite a common response in a lot of your analysis and verification in terms of the lack of disclosure?
It really is. If we don't see it as much as we did before you don't see a lot of flips, at least in my area currently. Okay. So you can kind of get a feel for, hey, things are starting to flip, and we just haven't really been seeing that. But, following up with agents can be, you just get, a lot of times since this is non-disclosure, it's a stonewall. They'll just tell you, sorry, I'm not at liberty to tell you that information.
I see.
The client would not like it. And so, you could just put in there that, hey, this does appear to be a prior sale. However, the information was undisclosed, and Texas is a non-disclosure state, and give all the, the verbatim explanation with the fact that, we're not able to obtain all the data possible.
It's quite an interesting challenge that people in disclosure states, kind of start their little wheels in their head just start kind of spinning a little bit of extra heat there at first. They're like, oh my goodness, how do you overcome that one? That is something else. How did you all manage through the great foreclosure crisis, which obviously really hit Houston hard and other parts of Texas? And you all have a different legislation as it relates to foreclosures compared to judicial and non-judicial states. So you guys obviously being a non-judicial state, your distressed and foreclosure activity moves real fast compared to other states.
the firm that I was with, it just wasn't sustainable. So we ended up leaving, and there was a tough headwind there for quite a few years. Work dropped off significantly. There still was work, but things were all shifting through the Dodd-Frank, HBCC, all of those,
Sure.
So we really started getting back in, I guess it was 2011 or 2012. Things finally started. I guess it was 12, yeah. Things really started shaping up. The fees were coming back more in line, and the workload was finally back to acceptable levels. One thing that did change, and I haven't seen it go back, was the amount of reverence we were given as appraisers. That's kind of been lost through the financial crisis, and I don't think we're still back. As a matter of fact, it seems like we're being challenged even more so now than we were back then.
Wow.
Unbiased nature, we're kind of being questioned about our ethics, it seems. And it also seems that people just in the mortgage industry just don't give us the respect that I think we kind of deserve. I mean, I know I'm obviously biased when it comes to that, but a lot of appraisers that have made it around since the Great Recession and then now through this downturn, we've all studied our craft for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. We're not just throwing numbers out there. We're doing real work that we feel that matters. And I think it's kind of disheartening to some people to be discounted the way that we have been lately.
I can definitely appreciate that. What have you found in the recent years? I mean, obviously the market has been difficult here of 2023, but I mean 2022 and 21 or something else. But where have you really focused, your valuation and appraisal work? Do you tend to primarily do lender work, or do you tend to deal more in private or litigation kind of things?
I started building my non-lender revenue stream back in 2020, and I focused on it as much as the market would allow, but during the pandemic, we were all kind of crazy busy. But I did cultivate some relationships and hone my abilities to perform a lot of divorce work, which is what I do quite a bit of. It's a significant portion of my business. And part of the question you were asking earlier, what do my peers not do or not want to do? I think a big part of that is divorce work. People are kind of afraid of a divorce work. I don't, maybe it's just a fear of having to get up and testify, which for some people getting up in front of an audience and speaking is worse than death.
Yes.
I don't have that problem.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I really enjoy that. And it's fun because, just to go back on what we were talking about before, you really are valued as a professional when you're doing work like that. And it's a different reporting level. And I enjoy that. With someone that's used to looking at appraisals all the time, like a lender, there's a certain narrative that needs to be in the report, and it needs to be there because of requirements. Whereas when you're performing an assignment that's going to be before a judge, there's a different level of narrative because you have to assume that your users aren't as well versed as a lender. And so you get to explain things more and really talk about the market more.
Yeah, that is quite an approach. Given all that you've seen and all you've experienced, what are you looking forward to, or what are you looking ahead to over the next, 3 to 5 years?
Really building out more of my private improvement, my personal improvement. I'm going to start working on my classes for my certification this year. I kind of missed that certification window, and then it came closing down, and now I've decided, it's time to get off the fence and start working towards my classes and get my certification.
Nice. That is, was it Warren Buffett that said the best investment any of us can make is an investment in ourselves, developing our ability and our competency along the way. So that is fascinating to hear. Well, man, Wade, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for joining us. What a fascinating story. Glad, in all seriousness, that your recovery was just as successful as it was. It allows you to be part of the industry. And, man, I just really appreciate your openness.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's been great. And appraisal has served me well. And I think it'll serve myself as well as future appraisers going forward. It might look a little different, but I think we're in an industry that's not going anywhere.
Tend to agree with you on that one. So, friends, as I'd mentioned, Wade's story is definitely one that like so many others, just does not have a comparison, and nothing else quite an important reminder of the power of resilience, as well as the level math. So love to hear that piece as well. So who are now another person that comes to mind that they should hear this story, man. Wow, this is phenomenal. And look what Wade has gone through and here now and still continuing and contributing to the industry. Love for that opportunity to share that. So as we bring this episode to a close, again, thank you. And until the next one, keep on appraising.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Appraisers, Appraisers on Purpose. We hope you enjoyed learning from the amazing professional paths and achievements of our beloved guests. Before we go, please subscribe on your listening channel, Spotify, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other podcast channels to hear more from appraisers and valuers regarding their life and their work. After you drop a comment below, who is one friend and peer you can generously share this episode with? If you have any suggestions or questions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a message on LinkedIn and we'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks again for listening, and until we're together again for the next session of Appraisers on Purpose, create the change that you seek.